With the structure of those massive steel coasters in front of us, you'd be right to think we're at a Six Flags park. In this case, Six Flags Great Adventure in Jackson, New Jersey. One of the largest thrill parks in the world, and one of the premier Six Flags parks in that chain. The park opened in 1974, and at that time it was a safari, which still exists, and an enchanted forest. And over the years, Six Flags has expanded, as you might expect, and this park has some really world-class roller coasters, lots of thrill rides, lots of places to eat. So let's get going. That white tent you see in the distance is set up for security, and the way they do security check-in here is pretty nice. They have monitors, and when you walk in, they can see basically what you're carrying, and they know if you're dangerous or not. And if you're not, they just say, okay, just go right through, and you don't have to empty your pockets. So, that being said, let's go inside. And there are the ticket gates, and also the exit way at the end over there. And let's turn around, and here is the big gift shop on the Midway. And over on the left side, you have another gift shop. They have lots of gift shops in the park. And of course, they have Six Flags branded merchandise, Looney Tunes characters, all sorts of stuff like that, like other Six Flags parks. As you see down the middle here, that huge fountain, when it was built, was one of the largest fountains in the world. And it's still one of the largest fountains in the world. This whole entry area here has shops on either side, as you might expect. You can see a Johnny Rockets further in the distance, and off to the left is the Joker, which is a four-dimensional coaster that you'll find at a lot of Six Flags parks, because Six Flags, because it's so big, tends to buy rides in bulk. And flying up above overhead, you can see the Skyway, which is a really nice relaxing ride that'll take you from the lakefront area over to the Frontier Adventures area and back again if you want to go. Now there are three areas coming off from the fountain here. There's one on the right, there's one directly in front of you, and there's one off to the left. The park doesn't have a traditional sort of circular layout, and it was difficult figuring out how I wanted to do this walkthrough. It's sort of laid out like a big H. So I'm going to go off to the left here and explore some areas here, then sort of double back around to the other end of the park. So right here, you can see in front of us the park's old carousel. And I do mean old. It was built in 1881 by Frederick Savage. And what's unique about it is it's an English-style carousel, so it goes clockwise, as opposed to spinning counterclockwise like most American carousels. What you just saw there was Houdini's Great Escape, which is an illusion house, basically. It's you get in there, you sit in a long seat, and the room spins around you. It's a fun ride. And over here is one of my favorite buildings in any amusement park, the Yum Yum Cafe, designed to look like a giant sundae. And it serves a lot of food. They have veggie burgers in the park, a lot of vegetarian options actually, which I'm happy to see. So we're going to go sort of left from this area here into another area of the Midway, the boardwalk area. And they have a lot of games that you can see in front of us. And they have a lot of eateries here as well. The tall tower you see on the left is a parachute drop, one of the only ones left in the world. And it seems like, you know, in these days of 500-foot rides, it wouldn't be that thrilling, but when you're sitting there in a little tiny chair, suspended only by a chain, you feel your heart beating when you're that high in the air. It's a really fun ride. Notice, because of the heat, it was in the mid-90s that day with high humidity. They have all these misters all over the park, which is very refreshing. So as you might expect in an area named the Boardwalk, There are lots of concessions that you would find in a boardwalk. So games, and there's boardwalk steak and fries where they have cheesesteak. And then up in front of us is the Garden State Grill, which serves veggie burgers and hamburgers and, you know, typical amusement park fare. And then to the left of that are some more food booths that serve pork and rice and beans and all sorts of stuff. So we'll mosey on down this area of the Midway. You can see in front of you those two big towers on the left are for the slingshot. And there you can see one of the chairs for the parachute drop going up. And then coming down. The formal name of the ride, awkwardly, is Parachute Training Center Edwards Air Force Base Jump Tower. And off to the right there is Twister, which is a Huss topspin that has Twix labeling all over it. The big red coaster that you see on the left there, that's the one that we saw at the beginning of the video. That is Superman Ultimate Flight, which is a B&M flying coaster, meaning you're lying down and it's really intense. The one on the right is the Green Lantern, and both of those are accessed straight on here. Over on the left, there's a little alleyway that goes down here, and at the end of that alleyway is a set of go-karts. And as you'll discover as we go on here, there are a lot of dead ends in this park. So you'll get to one area and basically the only way out is to double back. So you can see the entrance to Superman Ultimate Flight straight in front of us. Over here on the right is the entrance to the Green Lantern. By the way, that yellow loop was part of Green Lantern. I guess Green and Yellow Lantern. So now we'll double back and head down this path to the next section of Midway that we'll explore. The park has been through several changes. Time Warner bought the park, and that's when all of the movie theming came in. We'll later on see Movie Town, and that was under the Time Warner brand that was created. And then Six Flags went through several changes, but the current Six Flags Corporation seems to be pretty stable and seems to be doing really well. I was here doing this walkthrough on the 5th of July, so it was a huge weekend. In fact, the traffic getting in here was backed up for several miles. But it is, at any case, a really popular park. So if you come, I suggest you come really early in the morning to get the rides you want, because otherwise you'll be waiting for several hours to get on the rides. Now we're entering a different area. This is the Golden Kingdom. And the Golden Kingdom is sort of a zoo area with a sort of Congo theme. Notice all of the growth in here is bamboo. It's real bamboo on all sides. Over here there's an exhibit of a giant tortoise, which you can see way in the distance there between the rails of the fence. So we're entering sort of the back end of the Golden Kingdom. And there is one signature ride here that pretty much everybody who comes here wants to ride. And at this point my arm was starting to get a little tired, so I was trying to switch out arms. So you'll see the camera dip a couple times here as I'm trying to not get numb in my hands. So here's a gift shop for the Golden Kingdom area, and of course there are games and there are food concessions. But this is the calling card on the right, Kingda, which is still at this point the tallest and fastest roller coaster ever built. It's essentially a copy of Cedar Point's Top Thrill Dragster, but just a little bit higher and a little bit faster, and it has a little speed bump at the end of it. The whole ride is about 30 seconds, but you get blasted from 0 to 126 miles an hour in 3 seconds, and that's the big thrill. And then you go up about 420 feet. And attached to the side of that big hill that you saw is Zumanjaro Drop of Doom. It's a set of 3 drop towers that you can see there, those orange lines running vertically. So you get dropped from about 400 feet in the air. It's a really interesting use of that structure to put 2 rides onto one. And this is the way you get to King Dakar. You basically walk all the way down the Golden Kingdom area here, which of course is a dead end, so we'll have to double back. Like Top Thrill Dragster, King Dakar has had its share of maintenance issues. It's a complicated mechanism to get it to run. It's like a jet aircraft taking off with a hydraulic line that pulls the whole coaster forward. But the time I was there, it was running solid the entire time. So I think they have those issues under control. When you hear that hiss of air, it usually means that King Dakar is going to take off. So let's see if we can see it here. And you can see the drop towers going up there as well. So there was the entrance to King Dakar and Drop of Doom. So now let's double back through this area, and we're going to go out a different way than we came in, so you can see the sort of zoo area that they have. I'm surprised they don't have an entrance from here directly to the safari, or have a way here to sign up for their safari that they have, because it seems like it would be a pretty good match for the area. A lot of nice theming in this park, as you can see. I don't know why I keep saying as you can see. It's a video. Of course you can see. As you're getting the idea, this is a really huge park. In fact, it's the second largest theme park in the United States. And it takes a while to get around here, so be prepared for a lot of walking. Thankfully, there aren't really any hills in this park to speak of. It's pretty much flat, so you don't have like Busch Gardens or Dorney Park or Holiday World where you're going up and down hills constantly, which is really exhausting in the heat. It's pretty straight. And there is a lot of shade in the park, and that gives you a little bit of relief from the heat. So the stone archway you see up ahead is where we came in. We're going to bear to the left, which will take us to the zoo section of the Golden Kingdom. One ride that I really miss that used to be nearby is Rolling Thunder, the great Bill Cobb designed wooden racing coaster that was in the park for many, many years. It had 2 completely different tracks, like a typical strange Bill Cobb coaster, so that if you rode one side, it was a completely different experience from the other side. That's a nice piece of architectural detailing. When I was at the park, I didn't see it used for anything, but it looks nice.
A camera. For a walk-through.
So the 2 employees we just walked past, they were always trying to engage people, and they had seen me before walk by, and this time they were asking about my walk-through camera. And there you can see a couple of cheetahs in the cage there. And over here, behind the glass, are a couple of sea lions. which people kept calling seals. And I'm sure the sea lions were quite offended. So that takes us out of the Golden Kingdom. Now, if we were to come out here and go right, we would end up back at the boardwalk area where we came into this area. And directly ahead of us is Bugs Bunny National Park, which is a really nice kids area. And from here, instead, we're going to go left to the Plaza del Carnaval, because there is my favorite ride in the entire park in this section. Unfortunately, when we were there, it wasn't running, but it should be running again pretty soon when you see this video. It is El Toro, which in my opinion is one of the greatest wooden roller coasters ever built. You can see part of the turnaround over here. It was made by Intamin. It is about 200 feet tall, and it goes about 70 miles an hour, glass smooth. But what is amazing about it is incredible amounts of airtime, really comfortable ride. You can see some of the Camelback hills there. And it's made out of engineered wood. So the way Intamin designed this and built it is they used basically pressed plywood and formed it in their factory and then shipped it to the park in sections like a steel roller coaster and then bolted it all together. So it is really remarkable. I love that ride, and to me it's worth the price of admission in the park just to ride that ride. Of course, we didn't pay technically anything to get in the park because we had our season passes, so it didn't cost me anything to not ride this ride. And over on the right, you can see this shower that's going. I'm not really sure why it's there. I guess if people get off El Toro and are feeling faint, they can wake themselves up with a nice cold shower. Well, we're going to continue on down this path around the lake, and this will take us to the Frontier Adventures section of the park. The big fort-like structure you see there is the station for both the runaway mine train, track you can see there, and the Skyway. So we'll take a walk along, a nice peaceful walk over this bridge, and then into the Frontier Adventures section. In the distance you can see the train going up the lift hill there, so we'll pause and watch it go around. And no, that looping coaster there is not the mine train. That's Medusa, which we'll see in a minute. This is one of the early Aero mine trains. It opened with the park, and it has the typical Aero mine train ride experience. A couple lift hills and mostly just swooping turns and drops. It's a good family ride. That gives you an idea of how incredibly tall El Toro is. It almost looks the same size as King Dakar from here. And we'll speed things up a little here to get across the bridge. Normally I prefer to do these videos in real time so you get a sense of how long it takes to actually walk through the park. But this park is big enough as it is. I think you're getting the idea of how much you've got to go through. There goes the second car of the mine train. You notice the first one was white. You couldn't really see it clearly from that distance, but it had colorful handprints all over it. I couldn't find out why that was. I assume it's for a charity, but I'm not sure. But if any of you know, let us all know in the comments.
Download it now and put the power of the Six Flags app to work for you.
Alright, so now we're in the Frontier Adventure section, and there's Medusa, a big B&M sit-down looper. And then right next to it is this large sort of mound of dirt. Well, that's a big arena stadium, an outdoor one, of course. And they have concerts there, usually all during the year. So we'll pass under the mine train hill here, and then we'll pop out onto the Frontier Adventures Midway. The last time Karen and I were at the park was about 15 years ago. And at that time, this area was quite a bit different. The big lift that you can see there in the distance is for the Sawmill log flume, which is a remarkably long and beautiful ride, one of my favorite rides in the park, and unfortunately it was also not open when we were there. But they also used to have next to this a giant teepee, and I mean like 20 feet high teepee that was a gift shop. And then next to that was this massive, like 2-story Conestoga wagon that was an eatery. And it was really charming, and that was a holdover from the original version of the park from '74. And Six Flags eventually got rid of those. And the area was taken over by the Bugs Bunny National Park, which arguably is a better use of that space, but I just thought those two iconic items, the teepee and the wagon, were unforgettable when you saw them. You've never seen anything like that before. So here you see on the right the exit for the mine train. And over on the left is the Dino gift shop. They have a dinosaur exhibit that you can walk through, like a lot of parks have. And over here on the left is the entrance to the safari. The big eatery in front of you is Best of the West, and it's a sort of common thing now at many amusement parks. They serve beer and wine everywhere. It's just an amazing change over the last decade or so. Parks used to be fairly dry when it came to alcohol, but Six Flags Great Adventure has jumped on the bandwagon, and they have lots and lots of libations all over the park. And there's the Sawmill log flume, sadly shuttered for now. I hope it does reopen, because it is a really nice ride. And that giant water wheel actually used to spin. So now we're heading out of Frontier Adventures, and what I'm going to do is take you through the Bugs Bunny National Park, just so you can see what it's like. There were plenty of tables like those over on the left around the park. So if you wanted to eat outside, you didn't have to worry about getting baked alive, because most of them will have umbrellas over them. Great Adventure is surrounded by a couple lakes, and the original conception behind the park was to utilize those lakes as part of the theming, and it never really ended up happening that way. But the flume ride actually does go out over one of the lakes, and it utilizes it as it goes around some of the little islands there. And as you'll see, one of the lakes is currently used for fireworks displays. That's where they shoot off the fireworks from. So here we are in Bugs Bunny National Park, and as you might expect, it's a fairly standard kiddie ride area, and some of the rides are themed to Looney Tunes and some aren't. Like this carousel's a fairly standard carousel. But it's nice that Six Flags has stuff for little kids to do in the midst of all these massive thrill rides that they can't go on. Yet. In the distance there you can see the parachute drop. That's a really good landmark so you can get your bearings in this huge park, as is King Dakar and El Toro. You can see those almost anywhere in the park, so it gives you a sense of where you are. When we exit this, if you remember earlier in this video, I pointed out the Bugs Bunny National Park, and that's where we're coming out, in that stretch of Midway right around the boardwalk. Here's one of the entrances to the Golden Kingdom. And this is another sort of landmark in the park. Out in the distance you can see the Arch of the Sky Coaster. But there are these 4 tents that are gift shops. And, well, 3 of them are a gift shop. 1 of them is an arcade. And when you're in this area, you know you're very close to the Lakeside, the lakefront area. There is on the left a path that will lead you down along the lakefront, and it's a nice shady path that's very relaxing. So let's go there, shall we? If we were to continue on between the tents and keep going, that would have brought us back toward the carousel. There's also at the end of this walkway here a little dog park, so if you bring your dog you can take them there and let them do their business. I wouldn't want to be the poor employee who has to deal with that all day. Now off to the right you can see the Yum Yum Cafe. That gives you a sense of where we are in the park. And that big pillar that you see on the right is for the Skyway. And in front of us now is a teacup ride. And as we continue down this way, we'll be in the formal lakefront area of the park. You can see in front of us the Joker coaster that we saw at the beginning of this video. So we're at the very back of the park now. For those of you keeping score, we started this video at the furthest north end of the park, and then we went east. Now we're at the furthest southern end of the park, and we're heading west. And this is one of the lakes, Switlick Lake, that's on the eastern side. Prospertown Lake continues off to the west. After the pandemic, a lot of parks were struggling to reopen because mainly they had no help. And the same is true of this park. And if you notice over here on the right, they have a collection of food trucks out on the green to pick up the slack because there were a lot of concessions that simply couldn't open because they didn't have any help. And we saw this time and time again at not only parks but hotels and restaurants. Some parks were paying up to $20 an hour, some parks were giving signing bonuses, and they still couldn't get any help. But they made do as best they could, and like you see here, most of the stuff was operational in the park, which, kudos to them for being able to get it together. Especially when you have such a huge crowd coming after being cooped up for a year because of the pandemic. There you can see Joker going around. In front of us on the right is the Villain Cafe, and if you were to go right from there, you'd end up back at the fountain at the entrance of the park. One thing I forgot to mention earlier is that they do have a water park, Hurricane Harbor, that's detached from the rest of the park. And it's really popular, and that's where a lot of people were today when we were coming in. A lot of the cars were heading to Hurricane Harbor rather than the amusement park. Coming up on the left is Harley Quinn's Crazy Train, a nice Zero family coaster, and Six Flags has many of those with different names in most of their parks. Through the trees you can see Buccaneer, a swinging ship ride. I like this water feature over here on the right. And hidden behind the trees there, you can see the giant Ferris wheel and the Sky Screamer. The Ferris wheel actually was the largest in the world for a time when the park opened. And there's Swashbuckler, which is a roundup. There's Buccaneer. I thought it was interesting that masks were recommended in the park, but they weren't required, especially if you'd been vaccinated. But the vast majority of people, you know, even though they were packed tightly into lines, nobody was wearing masks, hardly. You only saw a few people. So, in many people's minds, the pandemic evidently is over. And now we're coming up to a little boat concession here where you can steer your own boat on a pond. Over on the right, that white structure is the lakefront station for the Skyway. And walking down this path would take you to the giant wheel and the Sky Screamer. In front of us is Chop Six, an Asian restaurant. And then over on the left here is one of my favorite themed rides ever. It goes with Skull Mountain, which we're going to see in a minute. But notice all of the cabs are the skeleton's hands holding the passengers. I think that's just so cool. There you can see the line for the Skyway, and they were running all but 2 cars on the Skyway. The next day when we went there, this queue line was completely empty. Most of the cars for the Skyway were in the station in storage, and the ride was a walk-on. So yeah, 4th of July weekend, it's a bit crowded, especially after a pandemic. In front of us is Granny's Kitchen, which serves chicken dinners and hamburgers and hot dogs. And then here is one of the most beautifully themed exteriors of a ride that I've ever seen. It's just a big metal building, but it's all with fake concrete and waterfalls. It's Skull Mountain, and it's an indoor roller coaster. It actually is more of a family ride. It's a very small coaster. It doesn't get, I think, more than 30 feet in the air, and it's a lot of twists and turns in the dark. But it's an enjoyable ride. One of the initiatives the park has, which surprised me, was to be one of the first green parks in the United States. In other words, have everything powered by green energy. And if you think of the amount of power this park takes just to run the roller coasters, that's a pretty tall order. But they've made a lot of headway. and they have an entire parking area with a roof over it that's all solar panels, and that's currently providing 11 megawatts of power, which I was really amazed at. So they're making progress. All right, and now we're at the far west end of the park. On the left is another kiddie area. It used to be a Wiggles World, now it's called Safari Kids. And in front of us is Nitro, which is my favorite ride in the park since El Toro isn't running. That's a massive B&M hypercoaster. So it just goes out and comes back with huge airtime hills. You get enormous amounts of airtime and a really intense helix at the end. It's a great ride. And then in the background there you see the park's newest coaster, as of this video, Jersey Devil. And we're going to get a closer look at that in a minute. Jersey Devil is the only single rail coaster on the East Coast. And what that means is that the train, instead of riding on a track like a train track with two rails, only has a single I-beam in the middle. And the trains themselves are sort of like bobsled trains or a flume ride where you just sit one person in a car, one behind another. Over here in the corner you see Congo Rapids, which is a drenching rapids ride. It's really nice. Lots and lots of splashing in that, where the raft just bobs up and down in the waves. So we're going to follow this path here next to Congo Rapids, which will take us over to the Jersey Devil. You can also get there through that Kiddieland area. There's a picturesque wooden walkway that takes you around and down from our left side over there. This ride really surprised me. You can't choose a seat. When you get into the station, the trains are basically cycling continually through as if they're on a treadmill. I mean, they never stop moving. And you can see that vaguely in the station there. So what happens is the attendants just say, you sit here, you sit here, you sit here. And you just have to get into the moving train, and you have an over-the-shoulder lap bar with soft cloth shoulder restraints, and then you're off and running. I ended up in the back seat, which I normally don't like, but this ride was so smooth, and the G-forces when you hit the bottom of a hill were really mild. I didn't feel any excess force, I didn't feel any pain. It's just a beautifully balanced ride. And these inversions, this ride was created by Rocky Mountain Construction, which did Steel Vengeance at Cedar Point and Wicked Cyclone at Six Flags New England and the new Texas Giant. So they're really good at these inversions and transitions. They do a really nice job making them very smooth and comfortable. I had a real fun time on this ride. I was very surprised. It's exciting and intense, but not punishing. Over here in the corner is a little tornado ride. And let's take a walk across that little bridge into Kiddieland. So now we're down to one last themed area in the park that we haven't seen yet, and we'll be heading over to that. If you haven't got the idea now, I will tell you this is a 2-day park at least. You just can't see everything in this park in one day. So there are plenty of hotels and motels in the area that you can stay at, and you'll probably want to do a multi-day visit here, especially if you pick a busy day, like a nice day like today or a holiday, because there is no way you're going to be able to get on all the rides. I mean, even just with the coasters, there are 14 coasters in the park, and that will take you more than one day to get on every single one of them if it's a busy day. And just a reminder that, like many parks across the U.S. now, Six Flags no longer accepts cash in the park. You can pay by mobile, credit, or debit, or you can purchase a prepaid Visa card there to use in the park. So now we'll exit the Safari Kids area And we're just going to walk down a little bit and hang a left, and we'll be entering Movie Town, the last area of the park that we're going to look at today. As you can see, there are some more places to eat. There's a little mini Johnny Rocket stand there and a Primo's Pizzeria that has salad as well. And that blue facade you see way far in front there is the Studio 28 arcade. Unfortunately, none of the arcades have pinball machines. Now, I haven't really pointed out any of the shows that you can see here. There are 6 different theaters in the park that run shows during most of the day. I'll point out one that's going to be really obvious when we get a little further into Movie Town. But if you do like shows, then there's plenty in that area for you to entertain yourself with all day. So over here on the left is the entrance to Movie Town. That massive metal building on the right is the Dark Knight, which is an indoor roller coaster. And over here on the left is a landmark coaster. This is Batman the Ride, the first suspended looping coaster made by Bolliger and Mabillard B&M. And it created a revolution in the engineering and manufacture of roller coasters. It was incredibly smooth. And I rode it when it first was installed in 1993 and blew me away. I'd never ridden anything like that. Now, of course, they're a dime a dozen. They're everywhere, and B&M has gone on to design lots and lots of other coasters. And then far in the distance there is the awkwardly named Wonder Woman Lasso of Truth. And I thought that was a dead end down there, but it wasn't. So let's, through the magic of video, go explore this area. Wonder Woman, as of this video, was supposed to be the tallest Frisbee-style ride in the world. So that's its calling card. And that opened 2 years ago. Then there's this really interesting bridge. It's like a suspension bridge over nothing. There's just a lawn there. I thought I was going to find like a little brook or stream or something underneath it, but it's just there for looks. It has no functionality. And in front of us, you can see Cyborg. And there aren't that many of those type of rides around. It's essentially a giant gyroscope that you're strapped into, and it spins you in every axis imaginable. This enormous domed building used to be part of Batman and Robin the Chiller, one of the most brutal steel roller coasters ever constructed, and the coaster was removed. The building still stands. And then there's the Showcase Theater over on the left that would have shows. And over here is the Hall of Justice. And housed inside there is Justice League, Battle for Metropolis. This park really does love colons. So many rides have colons in them. Anyway, that's a 4D simulator ride. And then there is a way out. If you go way down there on the right, you can get back onto the main Midway, but it's a really uninteresting walk, so we're just going to dissolve back to this area here and continue along this path. There's the Studio 28 arcade, and we'll just continue up through here. Like all Six Flags parks, Great Adventure hosts Halloween events, which are really popular. And they have early in the day events for kids, and then at night it becomes a little more gory and intense for adults and teens. So check their schedules to find out when those happen. But they usually start the end of August, beginning of September, and run all the way through Halloween. And so now we're leaving Movie Town, and in front of us, once again, is Granny's Country Kitchen. Funny story about that. When Karen and I went in there, they had sweet corn that was advertised, and macaroni and cheese, and mashed potatoes, and, of course, chicken. And I don't eat chicken. So I said, could I have just the sides, the mashed potatoes and the sweet corn? And they said, no, you have to get the chicken with it. I said, I don't want the chicken. They said, well, you have to have 3 pieces, the chicken, the sweet corn, and the mashed potatoes. I said, well, can I get the macaroni and cheese instead of the chicken? And they said, no, you have to get the chicken. And I went, okay, well, I'll get nothing then. And Karen just got a salad. And when we went to the cashier said, oh, you should have just told them you were vegan, and they would have given it to you without the chicken. I'm like, well, why didn't they tell me? So anyway, in front of us now is it says arcade, but there are just 3 little machines there. And then over on the right is a sort of laser tag mirror maze. There's the giant wheel. And over there is Mamma Flora's, which is a sort of Italian kitchen. And as I've said before, I really do like the variety of architecture in this park. And with that, we're moving back toward the entrance of the park. So that concludes this tour of Six Flags Great Adventure. If you do come here, I highly recommend getting a season pass, because that makes it really cheap to get in here as many times as you want. And as I said, you will want to come here for more than one day. Over here on the right, you see season pass and membership. Well, if you go there, you can get things like, if you have the special season pass, you can get a mug. You see a lot of people carrying these plastic mugs around, and you can get soda refills a lot cheaper. You know, food is not too cheap here, but it wasn't too pricey. We ate pretty well for a reasonable amount for an amusement park. They also have pretty nice gifts too. I got some nice magnets there and shirts. What you have in Six Flags Great Adventure is basically the ideal amusement park. There's something for everyone, truly. You've got the shows, you've got the rides, and a wide variety of them. So if you want heavy thrill rides, you've got that. If you want very family-oriented rides that you can all ride together, you've got that. If you want really mild rides, like the Skyway, you've got that. You've got shade. So if you're in the New Jersey area, and this area has lots to do, it's worth making a side trip or a main trip to Six Flags Great Adventure in Jackson, New Jersey.